Um, Thanks everyone for the time. I am going to talk through just kind of a common workflow that I've found to be pretty helpful with generating lots of reports, presentations, things like that. I work in IT and I am kind of in two main spaces. So one is as a lead engineer and the other is as a product owner for our collaboration platform. And so creating lots of content is really a core part of my day to day. And Copilot's been really helpful to kind of expedite that process for me. Um, so just to start out, I'm going to focus on high level, kind of what are those, workflows and the commonalities between how I might do this, um, without Copilot and really how I was able to integrate Copilot into those same steps. So starting from the left here, getting started, just framing out that background and problem statements, figuring, what are my input files and what can I pull in to get the results that I want, and how might I supplement that research, right? So these are things that, as an analyst or as I'm putting my presentation together, I'm likely doing a lot of anyways. And what I found is a lot of those same key steps are really helpful in getting that prompt pulled together for kind of an initial draft. So from that standpoint, this is probably the workflow to get, that starting point, that draft that we're going to then bring into this next stage of editing and making revisions. So as a kind of an analyst or an engineer at heart, I am always looking for, what are the trends that I might have missed, or how can I validate the insights that I might have gleaned from this data or this analysis, and what additional research might be out there that's relevant that I can use to augment what I found. And Copilot's been really helpful in one, sanity checking what I'm observing. If I'm, say, validating a hypothesis, having that objective viewpoint of did it come to the same conclusion, or might there be a different perspective that I may have otherwise overlooked? And then two, what might be out there, on the public web that might also be good, research to incorporate. So it can really bring forward easily based off of the content that you're putting together, things that you might also want to consider incorporating. And from that perspective, I found it really helpful to also include in your prompt, how do you want to scope that search, right? So maybe I want to tell it to only look at this type of source, or only look at things from the last 3 years, things of that nature. And in a similar fashion, pulling in new visuals or other things that might help augment your presentation. And then lastly, as we're getting closer to the finish line with our content, and we're really more of in a fine-tuning stage, kind of validating that what you've got pulled together is hitting on the key points that you wanted to resonate with your audience, is one thing that's been really helpful. Putting together those executive summaries, helping you organize, and even doing some coaching has all been kind of activities that I was able to partially or fully offload to Copilot. And so it saves quite a bit of time there. All right, so then let's get into an example. So for the initial prompt, this is one that I use to get that first draft kicked off. So in this case, I had a working document that was in Word, where I had been kind of collecting all of my research, graphs, things of that nature in one place. And then as I'm preparing kind of the final report or the outcome of that work item, I want to walk through it more for an executive or leadership audience with a PowerPoint. And so the prompt that I use was to please create a presentation to provide a quarterly product update to executives, focusing on user adoption, customer feedback and sentiment, and ROI. Make it relevant to a non-technical audience and business leadership, and use the images and themes from my input file as the basis for the content, and frame it under the heading situation, background, assessment, and recommendation and use a professional tone. So you'll see here, Copilot first asked me, because I was using one of our Templify templates to incorporate our branding, if I was okay with and overwriting some of those slides. And so I responded yes. And that was helpful as well. So I didn't have to go back and, kind of transition what Copilot had generated into the branded template. So I found if you start your prompt from there, it kind of helps you skip over that step. And so then as the output of that prompt, Copilot did a really good job with putting together a slide deck of about 18 slides. It covered the content that I was really looking to highlight using the structure that I asked it to. And here I just wanted to call out a few highlights that I learned as I've kind of iterated through using Copilot in a few of these types of scenarios. So one was it did a really good job of incorporating visuals, graphs, tables from my source document. So a lot of times I will kind of create those on the fly as I'm going through, maybe it's a user survey or I'm pulling some analytics and doing an analysis there, and I might have it sourced in that document, and Copilot was able to recognize the appropriate context in the presentation to bring that in, which was really helpful. And then it also pulled in images to kind of supplement where I didn't have that visual element in my source document. So that was really, really nice to see that, it's dropping things where they're relevant and it's able to keep track of, that type of flow. And so a tip, I guess, if you're looking to follow that same type of workflow is that you can include, your desired visuals. Perhaps there's certain things in your input file that you want to target, or, if you go back and iterate with Copilot and you say, search for an image that represents this, it can pull those back and even give you some options to choose from. In this case, I was happy with what it found kind of on its own, just getting a stock image from the web. And then secondly here, it also created some speaker notes for me. So that was really helpful because it used the content from the document that it didn't necessarily pull into the slides, but again, found the right place to drop those in and made sure that, it was staying relevant. And you can even incorporate how much time you intend to speak on the topic for. So I've used it in cases where I might be slotted in an agenda on a topic for 15 minutes. And the speaker notes were, tailored to kind of hit that time frame. So something else to consider as you are writing your prompts. And then number 3 here, the original content section in your notes pane, I found really helpful because it's kind of like your citation or pointer to understand where within that input file did Copilot source that content from. So in the example here, my working document was 50 plus pages. So while I probably could have, combed back through it and found where this particular content was in that document, having this kind of index to jump back to made it a lot easier for me to say, is there anything else in this topic from the document that maybe I want to ask Copilot to add, or, just to go back and understand how was this slide put together. So the original content heading is something that I go back to quite often just to make sure, I'm covering everything that I want to, and the material in the presentation resonates with the intent from the other piece, from the input file rather. And that is all I have. Thank you.